Hey, what is going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. And today we are on our 35th in-depth character review where we look at the next Rogue One character, Baze Malbus. A lot of people have been asking for a Baze review because all the Rogue One characters became free-to-play recently. However, Baze is the most difficult free-to-play character to farm out of the Rogue One squadron, and many people want to know, is it worth farming him? Is it worth even taking him to 3 stars? Well, there is some good news with that question, so stick around and let's talk about the history of Baze Malbus. Born on the moon of Jedha, Baze Malbus was once a member of the Guardians of the Wills, which was a religious order that had a goal of protecting the Temple of Kyber, but were forced to abandon their temple once the Empire took occupation of the moon. After being evicted by the Empire, Baze became a freelance assassin but still maintained his strong friendship with Chirrut Îmwe, who also used to be a member of the Guardians, and Baze was always around to cover and protect Chirrut when they got caught in the middle of a fight. Jedha, unfortunately, was caught as a victim for testing out the Death Star's power, and as a result, Baze and Chirrut became part of the Rogue One squadron to assist their cause of fighting the Empire. The battle on Scarif claimed many lives that day, where Baze Malbus fought on the front line and killed many Death Troopers before he and Chirrut ultimately met their own defeat. And in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, Baze continues to stand on the front line to cover for his allies as they press the attack, while also clearing the enemy from buffs so no obstacle stands in the way of victory. So to start our conversation on Baze Malbus in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we first need to talk about how to unlock this character, and it's a very touchy subject. You're going to need 50 shards of Baze Malbus to get him unlocked at 3 stars, and there's a variety of methods that you could get him at, and there's a really important method you could have used way back when that is not available today. First of all, many people know you could go into the chromium packs, use your hard-earned crystals, and pull Baze Malbus shards, and the free-to-play method that just became a thing not too long ago is the fact that you can get him only on the light side hard battle 9C, and it is a very difficult battle. Only high level players can get it, and even when you're a high level player, it is very hard to 3-star. So the estimated time to 7 stars, if you are only doing the 3 battles free to play on that hard battle, it's looking something like this. If you can at least get 3 shards a day, it's going to take you 110 days at the very most. If you get about 2 shards a day, you're looking at about 165 days. And if you're getting 1 shard a day, you are looking at 330 days. But it could be longer, could be shorter, but there will be plenty of days where you get 0 shards of Baze Malbus. You can also acquire Baze Malbus shards in the daily shipments with your hard-earned crystals. A lot of people are turning to that method because 9C is not an easy battle to complete, and it's a long farm. But the way that I got Baze to 7 stars was through the shard shop. For a limited time in November and December, Baze was in the shard shop, and I used everything I could to get him to 7 stars, and it did pay off in the long run because the hard battle is very difficult. To put things in perspective, I just finished farming First Order TIE Pilot to 7 stars just a few days ago, and it took roughly 6 to 7 months, and that was with 2 battles. Baze Malbus has 1 battle only, so I can imagine it's going to be even more difficult than 6 to 7 months like the First Order TIE Pilot was. So in light of this difficult fact that Baze Malbus is not the easiest to acquire, our conversation will kind of revolve around Baze being at 3 stars and whether or not it is worth it. But for now, let's take a look at Baze Malbus' stats before his abilities and mods, and this data is updated to consider all of the rebels that just came into the game, including Bodhi. And we first look at the pros. Baze Malbus, as he is a tank, he boasts a lot of defensive type things, as we see in health, where he is number 4. Average health in this game is 19,338, and Baze is at 28,445. Like health, we have protection, and he is not slacking here at all. Baze is number 12 in protection, with the average being an even 20,000. Baze is at 29,364. Moving on, we got some more defensive things to talk about, where he is number 7 in armor. average is 227, and Baze is at 310. Now this might be odd, but even though he is a tank, he is number 8 in maximum damage. Quite odd, with the average being 5,514, Baze is at 8,364. Since Baze can apply debuffs, you need to make sure his potency is looking good, and it is definitely looking good. He is number 12 in potency, with the average being 30%. Baze is at 48%, which is definitely sufficient for Arena. And lastly, we have health steal. He has a very high health steal at 15%. Next up here, we have the average stats and only one thing, which is understandable for a tank, and that is armor penetration, where he is number 56. Average is 52, and Baze is at 44. And here we go, guys. We gotta get onto the stuff that poor Chewbacca wants to cry about. And that is the cons, and we got some pretty ugly things here. First of all, Baze is 114 in speed, aka dead last in the game. With the average speed being 127, Baze is rock bottom at 90. However, his kit kind of makes speed somewhat irrelevant, and we will talk a lot of theory crafting about what I mean here. Next up in the cons, we have number 106 in maximum basic damage, which he will be using quite a lot, with the average being 4,313. Baze is at 2,911, but considering he will counterattack a lot and apply speed down a lot, the damage isn't really too critical to look at, but it's definitely important to know how much damage he will be dealing. And lastly, he has an AoE, and out of the 40 AoE characters we have in this game right now, he is number 38, with the average being 2,953. Baze is at 1,786, and this does not consider the additional damage that his AoE can do against Empire and debuffed enemies, and we will talk more about that because now we are transitioning into what his kit is all about, and his first ability we need to look at is Heavy Repeater Cannon. What it does is that it deals physical damage to a target enemy with a 70% chance to inflict speed down for not 1, not 2, but 3 turns. And if Chirrut Imwe is present, he gains 10% turn meter on this basic attack. So essentially 5's 2.0, speed down for a long time and has higher potency than 5's. It makes sure that he applies speed down as much as possible, and if Chirrut is present, this really does compensate for his very slow speed in the game. So Chirrut is a very good companion, as we will find out for Baze Malbus. Next up is Unload. This has a 3-turn cooldown where it deals physical damage to all enemies and dispels all debuffs on them. And here's the cool part. Empire enemies and enemies who were not buffed take bonus damage equal to 25% of their max health. Plus, if Chirrut Imwe is present, he is called to assist. So one of about 4 characters in this game who can dispel all buffs, with the others being B2 Super Battle Droid, Echo, and Asajj. If an enemy is both an Empire and they're debuffed, they will lose 50% of their max health, and I'm showing an example of how that works. So that is a lot of damage just to chew out right away. So even though his AoE is statistically very low in damage, it has the ability to chop away a huge portion of someone's health, and you don't need to be 7 stars to enjoy that benefit. You can have a 3-star Baze Malbus, and he can still chop away 50% of someone's max health. Next is Fierce Reprisal, 3-turn cooldown yet again, and it deals physical damage to a target enemy and dispels all buffs on them. So he has 2 buff stripping abilities. For each buff dispelled, he inflicts the opposite debuff, if there are any, for 2 turns. And it's kind of like what General Kenobi does, but instead, he does the opposite against the enemy. If they have offense up, they get offense down. And some buffs have no opposites like Taunt and Stealth, but he can still remove them. Now, Baze has 2 unique abilities. He is just a toolkit that has a lot of stuff at his disposal, with his first unique being for Jedha. Baze Malbus gains Taunt and Retribution for 1 turn at the start of each encounter, and whenever an enemy is defeated, and whenever Chirrut Imwe falls below 100% health, and Baze Malbus gains 5% turn meter whenever an enemy gains a buff. So yet again, another opportunity for Baze Malbus to gain a lot of turn meter. It's great when someone taunts and you want Baze to quickly dispel it. However, it can be a curse when you want to make him slow. Sometimes you just want him to taunt for a long time and not be super fast in battle. So if you do want him to taunt for a long time, then you will not like going up against Zeta, Qui-Gon Jinn teams, because they start off with a lot of buffs, and Baze pretty much has 100% turn meter at the very start of the battle, meaning he's going to lose his taunt really early in the game, and you might not like that strategy. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's both a blessing and a curse regarding that turn meter generation anytime an enemy gains a buff. And the last unique we have here to make him an even beefier tank is called Dauntless Courage. Baze Malbus gains max health equal to 20% of his max health, and Chirrut Imwe also gains that much max health. So here's an example. My Baze is about 28,000 health, and after this unique, he gains an additional 5,600 health, and he also gives Chirrut Imwe that 5,600 health. So definitely a nice little bonus, and it's especially great if you only have a 3-star Baze Malbus. And the great news about all these abilities is that Baze does not require any Zeta mats, so you're getting some great abilities without the hassle of getting those really difficult Zeta mats. And now let's look at the gear requirements. Normally tanks are pretty difficult to gear, but with Baze, he's roughly average to above average. As we see for raid gear, he is right on average, with the average being 3 pieces of raid gear. He needs 3 pieces as well, needing 2 Mark V droid collars, one being needed at gear 8 and the other at gear 9, and he does need a Mark 7 Nubian scanner at gear 9 as well, and no raid gear at gear 10 and gear 11. Next up is gold pieces. The average amount of gold gear right now is 200 pieces, and Baze is definitely above that at 330 pieces, and he will need 3 Mark 8 biotech implants, 2 at gear 10 to get to gear 11, and then once you're at gear 11, you will need 1 piece. And the purple gear, not the most fun topic to talk about, but he will need 1,340 pieces, with the average being 1,133. This puts him at number 22, with his most popular piece being the Mark III Carbonti sensor arrays, where he will need 350 pieces of those. And lastly, blue, green, and white gear. Essentially, he is slightly above average for all of them, but nothing too insane. With all that preliminary information and numbers that we had to go through, now I want to talk about my subjective review, where I first open up with my thoughts. And first off, I've already bounced around this idea quite a lot, but if you have Baze at 3 stars, he is definitely going to be a great tank. Kind of like Darth Nihilus, you don't need a 7-star Darth Nihilus to do insane things like he has with Annihilate. Baze Malbus is kind of the same thing. His purpose is to taunt at the beginning, take lots of punches, counterattack, apply speed down, taunt even more during battle, and even knock away some big health when someone is debuffed and if they are an Empire character, and none of those things rely on star count. It's all about maxing out the abilities and maxing out his gear, and you will get a lot of use in him. Sure, he won't have as much health, and he might not hit as hard, but he's a tank, and his job is mainly to taunt and take punches, and as long as you gear him up, he will do that job just fine. And I also think he is a much better tank than Shore Trooper because of the fact that Baze can taunt many times in battle and can dispel many times, flip buffs around on the enemy team. So just overall, I firmly believe Baze is much better than Shore Trooper, and the reason why I bring this up is because they are both right next to each other in the hard battles, and you might be deciding who to get first. The other popular question that I get is, do I have to use Chirrut Imwe with Baze Malbus? And by no means do you have to, and it's not even required, I would say. Most of the gameplay in this video has Baze Malbus in teams that have no Chirrut Imwe. He is just a very flexible tank that can work in essentially any type of lineup that is just looking for a tank that can auto-taunt and get rid of all those buffs on the field. But if you do happen to have Chirrut Imwe, I highly recommend you pair him and Baze Malbus together, because they are like thunder and lightning together and are super deadly. Baze will get extra taunts, he's going to give Chirrut extra health, he's going to gain lots of turn meter on his basic, so it's a really great combo to have, and one that I highly recommend having, but by no means do you have to have Chirrut to run Baze Malbus. With all that being said though, let's take a look at the mortal enemies, and he does have quite a lot of counters despite being a very flexible tank with a lot of stuff going on. First of all, his biggest threats are buff immunity, shock, buff dispellers, and ability block. With those being applied on him, he is not taunting when someone is defeated or when Chirrut needs the help, and won't be able to remove any buffs if he's ability block or remove lots of health with his special attack. Daze is there to prevent him from counterattacking. That's something he kind of hinges on to spread speed down everywhere. Stun also poses a slight problem because he won't counter or take a turn, but if he's stunned and taunting, it's not the worst thing in the world. Cleansers and tenacity up are also an issue to prevent him from applying things like speed down. Death Mark is also big, as well as Expose, to defeat Baze even faster. Since he has a huge health pool and protection pool, you want those debuffs to chop away that health really fast. Instant kill or big attacks like Execute, Culling Blade, or things like Annihilate and Overpower from Savage Opress are really great to make sure you can get Baze down even faster, because he can gain a lot of health, and if he's with Chirrut Imwe, you're going to have a hard time knocking him down. And also, characters with anti-rebel synergy are also somewhat of a threat, such as Grand Moff Tarkin. When we flip that pancake over, we got the best friends segment, and we already know, if you don't know by now, Chirrut and Baze is the best combo in the game. Highly recommend you get it, but again, by no means is it necessary. He works with all the Rogue One characters and pretty much all of the Rebels characters. Cleansers and Tenacity Up characters are personally my favorite to ensure he is always able to strip buffs because he's not being ability blocked, he's not getting buff immunity, so that means he'll taunt more, and he's just a lot more active in battle and can constantly participate properly. Currently, one of the most deadly Baze teams looks something like this. You got Rex, Chirrut Imwe, and Kenobi, and then insert something of your choice. Darth Nihilus, Boba Fett, as well as Baze is one of the most competitive teams as of now in Arena, and it's probably the ideal team if you can achieve something of that sort. And if you want to get cute, you can add him in some sort of counter-attack team with Ayla Secura or Count Dooku, or you might even put him in a debuff team with Darth Vader. He's just pretty much a flexible tank and can virtually work in any type of lineup in the game. And if you are going to use Baze either at 3 stars or 7 stars, you need to make sure you got the mods looking all right. Regarding the mods, he's actually the perfect candidate to use essentially any type of mod set. My personal favorite is just using the health mod set, one of the easiest mods to get in the game, and you just want to increase his health pool even more since it's already above 28,000. Tenacity mods are great to prevent debuffs from being applied. Critical damage and critical chance or even offense mods to make his attacks even stronger are also great, and if you want to use him for the raid, I might recommend you give him potency mods to ensure speed down is always applying as often as possible. And primary and secondary mods, I use 4 mods that increase his protection by 23.5% each, and I recommend that you do the same to ensure that he has a huge protection pool and can take so many punches, and this is especially critical if you are using a 3-star Baze Malbus. You can also use health, primary or secondary mods. I normally say give someone lots of speed, but this is the one situation where you might not really have to focus on speed because he already gains a lot of speed from his uniques of gaining turn meter every single time an enemy gains a buff, and you might not want him to be fast because you might want him to taunt as long as possible, and if he's a really fast character, that means he's taunting for a lesser amount of time. So it's up to you how you want to make that work, but I prefer having a slower Baze Malbus so he is taunting for a longer time. And finally, we are at Yoda's do or do not checklist, where we see where Baze is good at in the game, and essentially anywhere he can go, he's pretty good, and we see that in Arena. My opinion, one of the best tanks in the game, with Kenobi probably being number 1, Baze is for sure number 2, so let's go ahead and say do. Same thing for Galactic War, let's say do, because you will fight a lot of teams that taunt, have Empire characters, you might also have debuff characters, so definitely do. Light side battles, Cantina battles, definitely do. You will fight a lot of Empire characters, and removing max health will really help out. Mod challenges, there is the Tenacity mod challenge for Rebels, and he will help you out with that, but you might not get him to the correct star count to use him at the maximum mod level, so do keep that in mind. Ships is a do not. We do not have any ship for Baze at this moment. Rank or raid, although not a top choice, being able to apply constant speed down is great, so let's say do. And lastly, I'm going to say do for the AAT raid because he works for almost all phases, and I especially see him work great in phases 2, 3, and 4, so you'll get some use out of that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go and pull up the Hall of Fame and see where Baze Malbus lands in this game. He is one of the best tanks in the game, guys. I really do enjoy him. He's great at 3 stars, 7 stars. Highly recommend you get him. And if you saw my video where I ranked all the characters in the game, you will see that we ranked him as a Grand Master. Highly recommended. Very tough farm, but if you get those 50 shards and just get him at 3 stars, you'll be very happy, especially for Arena. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Feel free to let me know down below what you want to see next. We can keep going with Rogue One characters, or I can go to a completely different faction. These videos are in your hands, so let me know what you guys want to see. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave me a like, comment down below, subscribe, and check out my Patreon page. If you'd like to hang out with me on a monthly basis or gain access to these in-depth review materials, feel free to check it out. But guys, we will talk again very soon. Peace out.